It was a very long day for Steve Bannon today in a meeting of the House Intelligence Committee. We will have a member of that committee join us in a moment to tell us what he can about what happened in that room for 9.5 hours that Steve Bannon was there. The lawyer representing Steve Bannon in that meeting today is Bill Burke, who also represents White House counsel Don McGahn, as well as former Trump White House Chief of Staff Reince Priebus. This is an extraordinary situation because in the meeting today, Bannon's lawyer told the committee that Bannon was willing to answer questions, but he was under instructions from the White House not to. Those instructions would have come from White House counsel Don McGahn, who is one of the clients of Steve Bannon's lawyer. Here is everything that reporters got out of Steve Bannon tonight after his 9.5 hours with the committee.
Mr. Bannon, who from the White House asked you to invoke executive privilege?
Are you there?
How did the meeting go, Mr. Bannon?
Mr. Bannon, what did they ask you?
Mr. Bannon, what did they ask you in there?
What did they ask you in the meeting, Mr. Bannon?
What did they ask you in there, Mr. Bannon?
Great day. Thanks, guys.
California Congressman Adam Schiff is the ranking Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee, and when the meeting finally ended tonight, he said this.
After we explored several attempts to try to elicit information that took place during those periods, we convened on a bipartisan basis and agreed to the issuance of a subpoena to make his attendance at the hearing compulsory. He was then served with a subpoena during the course of the interview. His counsel then conferred again with the White House and was instructed by the White House to refuse again to answer any questions, even though he was under a compulsory process. Mr. Bannon was also under instructions not to answer questions even after he left the White House concerning conversations he had with the president that might be for the purpose of the president seeking his advice on anything. The scope of this assertion of privilege, if that's what it is breathtaking. It goes well beyond anything we have seen in this investigation. We expect to have Mr. Bannon back in, we hope very soon, with a different position by the White House, because this position is completely unsustainable.
Joining us now, Congressman Eric Swalwell, a Democrat from California, who is a member of the House Intelligence Committee. He was also at that hearing today. Congressman Swalwell, was that everything that happened? It was simply a discussion about process and the witness saying through his lawyer, I'm not going to answer any questions. How did that become 9.5 hours?
Good evening, Lawrence. We witnessed today what I believe was the most aggressive effort by the White House thus far to obstruct our efforts to seek the truth. And it took a long time to sort out what Mr. Bannon was willing to talk about and not, and most of it he was not willing to talk about, citing a privilege for the White House. But I want to just go through, Lawrence. First, he cited that he couldn't talk about what happened during the transition period. There's no evidence or case law to support that that is a privilege. Then he said he couldn't talk about what happened while he was working at the White House. Now, some of that could be covered by the White House. However, he even asserted that essentially if he was talking to a buddy over a beer about something that the president had told him, that was covered. That's never been covered. Most stunningly, I had asked him, and Mr. Schiff had asked him questions about what occurred after he left the White House in conversations with the president, and he asserted that the White House was prohibiting him from even talking about that. So outside the White House, even most recently that he's had conversations, he believes the White House is preventing him from testifying.
And, I mean, obviously there's no conceivable legal grounds for any kind of privilege during the transition. He's a private citizen at the time. He's a private citizen after he leaves the White House, and any conversations anyone has in that situation, there's no privilege whatsoever. Did his lawyer actually try to frame this in any kind of legal terms that you recognized?
I wouldn't say it was with a straight face, Lawrence. Again, this is disappointing because there are a lot of questions for Steve Bannon, and arguably you could say that he and the White House have waived this privilege. After all, he was cited a number of times, most recently in the Fire and Fury book, about conversations with the White House. And this also flies in the face of a president who has stood before the media and has said that he'll be completely cooperative and open with this investigation. And now we've seen in the last few weeks that not only is he backing away from the president from being willing to talk to Bob Mueller, but now, for the first time, they are muzzling witnesses who may have seen something pertinent to our investigation. And
you have support from Republicans on the committee on this. There are Republican members of the committee making public statements saying there's absolutely no privilege that applies here. Why are the Republicans suddenly cooperating with your view of this?
I can't speak to their motives, but I can tell you it was heartening for both of us to be on the same sheet of music today. That's what the country needs. If we're just pursuing what happened and talking to witnesses who have information and seeking documents that are relevant, then we're doing our jobs. And I'm encouraged by that. We're going to have more witnesses coming in the next few weeks, and I hope we continue to see that type of cooperation. We'll have a much better investigation.
There are indications that Hope Hicks is one of the witnesses who you'll be talking to in the near future?
I can't confirm, Lawrence, who the witnesses are. She certainly is a relevant individual in our investigation.
And also, the issue of bringing Steve Bannon back to the committee, is that going to happen on Thursday?
So that's right. I believe Chairman Nunes announced that that subpoena will extend later on this week. And hopefully we will have cleared up with the White House, and we will see just how cooperative they want to be. It's also, I think, very interesting that the Daily Beast is reporting that Steve Bannon will cooperate with Bob Mueller and waive all privileges. You know, under no case law or authority would he be able to waive the privilege to talk to the special counsel, but not waive it to talk to Congress for our investigation.
Yeah, and it's just easier, as you know, for the special counsel to immediately enforce an order for him to testify, since they're actually physically in court space, especially if it's a grand jury. The Congress would have to hold him in contempt and then try to go to court to enforce that. That would take quite a while.
That's right. You have a judge, you know, likely upstairs who can rule swiftly. But I hope my Republican colleagues are serious about, you know, doing all we can to compel the testimony and overcome these, you know, shenanigans. It's not shenanigans. Let's be real. This is an effort to disrupt our efforts to get the truth. And, you know, I think law school professors will teach entire semesters now on the new made-up privileges that the Trump administration has cited in this investigation.
Yes, and how long they actually last. How many hours that privilege works. Congressman Swalwell, please feel free to join us Thursday night and let us know how it goes with Steve Bannon on Thursday. Thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Lawrence.
Thank you. Coming up, Robert Mueller will hear everything that Bannon will have to say. That is what the Daily Beast is reporting tonight. The special prosecutor has subpoenaed Steve Bannon to testify to a grand jury, and Steve Bannon says he's going to tell him everything. That's